This tutorial is going to cover becoming while pregnant. Now, not only will this apply to clients who are pre or postnatal, this is also going to apply to anyone with a diastasis split, which I'll be explaining in this tutorial exactly what that is and how to find it. And then it's also going to apply to people who maybe have a lower disc herniation. I'm specifically thinking about those with a herniation in their L4, L5, or S1 area of the spine. And then I think today will also be beneficial for those who are just seeking more alternatives for different exercises that we do. All of that to say, in order to watch this tutorial, you do not have to be pregnant, you just have to be willing to learn. So let's get started. As far as the health of your baby is concerned, the Become Project is definitely pregnancy friendly. And what I mean by this is that when you do the Become Project, you're not in a super hot room, your heart rate is not so skyrocketed that it can be dangerous for the baby, and we're also not doing any impact exercises such as jumping up and down. And these three factors are things that doctors often cite that they do not want you to do while you're pregnant, especially if you haven't been doing them previously. So we don't have any of those things, which is awesome, okay? You're pregnancy friendly here. However, there is something that can happen with your body that we want to be really mindful of, and that is called diastasis recti. Diastasis recti is when the two muscles of the rectus abdominis are split more than 2 fingers width apart. Okay, so I'm gonna roll my pants over so we get a good visual here. In our stomach, there are all kinds of muscles that run through. We have muscles that run horizontally, we have muscles that run vertically, we have muscles way deep down in here, and all of these things together make up the integrity of the core. Now, there are 2 muscles that we are talking about today, and this is the rectus abdominis. These are the 2 muscles that run down this way. And you kind of know these, y'all, as like the 6-pack muscles. A lot of times people think that this is all that the abs are. The abs are so much more, but these are really prominent surface level muscles that we see, okay? Now, there is natural separation between them. See this little line here? See how I can stick a finger in it? If I had a bigger separation there and could stick 2 fingers or 3 fingers in there, that would be diastasis recti. And the reason that we don't like this separation is because we lose the integrity of the core, right? We don't have our brace, and I want you to think about brace about being something that goes this way. We don't have our brace supporting us, which can lead to lower back issues. So this separation can occur in all kinds of people. It's just more common in pregnancy because over the course of 9 months, suddenly your belly really expands. Those muscles will naturally split. We just want to make sure that once you are post-pregnancy, 6 to 8 weeks, that we're able to get those muscles to connect or to draw back together. They don't necessarily connect, but we want them to draw back towards one another. So the next thing I want to show you is how you check to see if you have diastasis recti. What you want to do is get those 2 muscles exposed so that you can stick your fingers in between them and feel how much space you have. So I have my pants pulled down here. I'm having 2002 flashbacks. We are going to crunch up, and then we're going to think about squeezing these 2 muscles toward one another, really popping them out. Typically when I teach you core work, always when I teach you core work, I have you pulling the belly button in and flattening out to the sides, okay? That's a more thorough muscle activation of the abdominals, but for this test, we want to pop and crunch up. Now, you're going to take your fingers and you're going to find this line that runs down in between those 2 muscles. And you may not be able to visually see the line, but you will be able to feel it, okay? So I'm sticking my finger in here, and I'm gonna start to go down and see how many fingers I can stick in between that line. And I'm basically feeling for the ridge of either muscle as I go down. Now, if you have 1 finger separation, that's okay. If you have a finger and a half, that's okay too. If you start to get to 2 fingers or 3 fingers or 4 fingers, which can often happen when you hit down toward the belly button, that means that you have a diastasis split, and you need to make sure that you do exercises that correct it and that you don't do exercises that can cause it to split more. There are 2 motions that can cause this split to worsen, and those 2 motions are rotation or twisting, as well as flexion or crunching, okay? So if you know that you have that split, or if you have a lower disc herniation because the mechanics are the same, or if you are pregnant, right, the belly has already expanded, those muscles are naturally already splitting apart, we don't want to do anything to worsen them. So we want to figure out how we can avoid twisting and crunching. Now, if you are pregnant, if you've already popped some, there's actually a really telltale sign that you can look for. It's very visual to see if you are causing that split to worsen, okay? I'm gonna show you a picture of it. It looks a little bit strange, but if you're pregnant, you probably know what I'm talking about. If ever you see kind of this looks like a little alien head popping out of the center of those muscles, it is a sure sign that you need to scale back. I'm gonna say this again. For those of you who are pregnant and have already popped, if you are doing an exercise and your stomach looks like the next picture I'm going to show you, it is a sure sign that you need to scale back and move into an alternative until you do not see that little alien head popping out. I don't know any other way to describe it. I want to start by reminding all of our pregnant people the many different options that we have for a plank position that you're more than welcome to take as your pregnancy continues, okay? So the first plank that we know is just the basic plank of being on the feet, hands right underneath you. Now, if you're doing this plank and you look down at your stomach and you see that pop happening, right? You're gonna say, ooh, I need to scale back. So the first scale back that you can do would be a plank on the knees. The next one you can do is a tabletop plank. You could also see what it feels like to place your hands on blocks. Because you're a little bit higher from the floor, it will be easier to keep your belly pulled in and keep the baby pulled in close to the spine. That's a great thing to think about. And then the next option would be up here on a chair, and I really, really love this for those of you who are pregnant because you're so high from the floor, you're still getting that core work without putting too much strain on the body or causing everything to fall forward. So those are your overall planking alternatives. For something like a twisted plank, our shoulders face the floor, but our feet and hips are facing toward the side. So this is definitely a twist. Now, at this moment, my feet are facing toward 9 o'clock, okay? So if you are pregnant and you've already started to pop, what you want to do is make this twist less severe. So instead of the feet pointing all the way toward 9 o'clock, maybe you would take the feet only a little bit of a twist and point them more toward, I don't know, like 11 o'clock. Then the next option, especially as you get further along, would be to simply cross one ankle over the other or to not twist at all, okay? And the same thing can apply to any of the other planks that I talked about. So if I'm on the knees here, this is a twisted plank with my knees facing all the way over toward 9 o'clock. And then basically, the further along I get in the pregnancy, so I like to think second trimester, I'm now moving toward the 11 o'clock. Then third trimester, I'm only crossing the ankles. And again, I highly recommend the chair. I just think it's so much nicer on the body here. 9 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock, better for a second trimester. Third trimester, just the feet and ankles crossed, so you stay facing 12 o'clock. Next exercise we'll talk about is torso twisting. So that's when we move in either direction this way. We sometimes do this kneeling or we do it standing. Now this one, especially because we're not bearing any weight, can actually take you fairly far along in your pregnancy, okay? The twisting will be okay. It'll give you some nice deep core work. But again, once you start to get later in the pregnancy, mid-second trimester, third trimester, depending on how you're feeling, we're going to avoid taking this twisting, and instead we're going to think about keeping the shoulders stacked directly over the hips, pulling the belly and the pelvic floor deeply in, and then with the arms you're going to do something I would call stirring the pot. So like you have a witch's brew in front of you, nothing changes as your arms take this rotation around, and it's actually really, really great core work because it's really harder than you think it would be to only isolate the movement of your arms without moving these 4 points from one another. The next exercise I want to talk about is seated flexion work or seated crunches, okay? So basically I'm talking about this stuff where we scoop, right? Now again, it depends on how far along you are in your pregnancy. So I would say if you're in early stages, a really great option is to grab the hands back behind the knees and then practice doing some of these scoops back and forth because it is really good for your core, but because you're holding on to the arms, you're not putting so much flexion into the stomach that you're causing that pop. Another option would be to give yourself some support behind your back. So if you need a little something to lean on, here, this is really, really great. So now I'm gonna let myself rest into the pillows. Then I'm gonna grab back behind my legs so my arms take some of the weight. And now I'm gonna think about pulling my spine or pulling the baby down toward the pillows and then back up a little. Again, down toward the pillows and then back up a little. The feeling is not so much a crunch, it's a little bit different. It's more of driving everything inward. And then the other place that you can go, especially once we really start to get close to the due date, is sitting up in a chair, okay? So you could sit here, tippy-toe the feet, scoot back just a little, and you can actually get some really great abdominal work here. Notice that I'm still holding on with my hands because I don't want to give myself too much flexion, right? The arms offer really nice support in this position. Now, sometimes we do that exact same exercise with a twist, right? We do this all the time in be.come. And here, yeah? So for these exercises, I would eliminate the twist with the torso and only take the arm motion. So it would look a little something like this, right? On the pillows, let me get these babies over here real quick. Same sort of thing, pulling down. You can hold on with the hands and then just moving one arm at a time. Because you don't have the support from this opposite arm, naturally that oblique will have to engage a little bit more. So you'll still be getting oblique work without getting so severe in the oblique work that again, you end up causing that split to worsen. Another place that involves a flexion or a crunch that you may not realize is when you're doing something like a roll down or a roll back up, okay? If you are taking this exercise, I would highly recommend using your hands to support you on and off the floor, but especially as you get further along in that pregnancy, when you come up and down, you may see that little alien head pop that we were talking about that you don't want to see. So if that happens, either don't lay all the way down to the floor, stop when you get to like your elbows, or do it with bent knees because that will shorten the lever and make it better for you to lift up. Another option is to simply roll to the side and then press yourself up to standing, seated. While we're down here, let's talk about laying on your back. Now, there's a lot of information about laying on your back when you're pregnant. And what it really applies to is extended periods of laying on your back, okay? Because it could cause a lack of oxygen getting to the baby. When we talk about extended periods of time, we're talking about several hours, such as what you would experience when you're sleeping. The laying on the back that you're doing in Become is like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, okay? It's a short period of time. So for most people, for many people, laying on the back will feel okay. However, there's a really easy sign to know if you should not be laying on your back. If you feel short of breath, it means that your baby is feeling short of breath. So the moment that you feel short of breath when laying on your back, it's a sign that you need to come up. Okay, perfect example. End of every Become routine, we do this exercise where we're just laying down on our back with our knees in tabletop and we focus on pulling our abdominals deeply in. Now, this is actually really, really great work for somebody with diastasis, low disc herniation, or pregnant because you're working core without doing any flexion and without doing any twisting. But if you start to feel short of breath, we've got to switch it up, okay? So one thing you can do is come up to your elbows. Now, at this moment, I'm not engaging through my core. Here I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna lift out of my shoulders, and now I'm gonna pull my belly deeply in. This is amazing core work. This is still great here. Another option that I really love would be moving to the pillows, kind of like I showed you before. You get these, really wedge them underneath, kind of like your low back butt. Then you can lean back into the pillows, get cozy, and now you want to think about pulling the spine, pulling the baby, pulling the belly, pulling it in nice and flat. Great core work here. One other option I want to show you for when we're laying down is to move into some hip lifts. So if you're here, you could just lift your butt up. And the reason why we like this is because it strengthens our glute, it works pelvic floor, it still hits core, and then we don't have quite as much pressure down on the back that could cause shortness of breath. So these are all really great options for when you are laying on your back. So aside from the exercises that I already showed you, such as the hip lifts, utilizing the pillow, right, all of those core stabling exercises, there are many other things that we do in Become that are really, really great for pregnancy. Specifically, kneeling on all fours, doing single leg work. I mean, this stuff is gold. Anything that we do that involves lunges, balancing, squat work, plank stabilizations, as well as side planking or turning to the side exercises. All of this stuff is great, great, great. So go for it. And finally, the last thing to be mindful of is your range of motion. So you may find during your pregnancy that you become much more flexible. If that's happening to you, it's because your body is producing something called relaxin. Now, your body produces relaxin when you're pregnant to basically lubricate the joints so that the pelvis can, push a baby through it, all right? But what you may find is that suddenly you can do the splits, or you can go much deeper in a pigeon pose, or you can get down really, really low in the lunges. I want you to be super mindful to avoid moving past a range of motion that you had pre-pregnancy, because this is oftentimes where injuries can come into play. Even though the body can go that deep, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's supposed to go that deep. So you'll have to work a little bit harder to kind of contain the range of motion to something that is more like how you were pre-pregnancy.